Hello and welcome. Today, we have a special episode, as our first. With today being Halloween, we have decided to give you this very short, but very chilling, true crime story. This will then be followed by some free-form chat about what we have heard, and maybe even some comments and questions. As this is a format for myself at least, this is a trial run. Follow us as we dive into the world of depravity, desperation, and darkness. And please, like and subscribe. For now, however, let's get into the details of this horrendous crime. Timothy and Elizabeth O'Brien went out trick-or-treating with their dad. Their neighbour Jim Bates and his children also came along, while the wives, Jean Bates and Daneen O'Brien, stayed behind to greet any trick-or-treaters and hand out sweet treats. As you would expect for the time of year, the weather was horrendous, so they decided that it would be best for the children to cover a smaller area. As the children came up to a house devoid of decoration, with the porch lights off, they decided to chance it and knock anyway. Becoming impatient with the lack of response, the children rushed off to the next house. While Bates herded the children down the street, O'Brien held behind a little bit. Moments later, armed with 5 giant pixie sticks, O'Brien catches up with the group, saying that rich neighbours were handing out expensive treats. O'Brien then passed 4 of the 5 pixie sticks around, 1 for each child. As the evening grew to a close, before returning home, O'Brien saw another child, a 10-year-old boy, that he recognised from the church, and he gave him the remaining pixie sticks. Now later that evening, when they got home, Daneen went out to meet a friend, and O'Brien used this time to get his children ready for bed. The children asked for some sweets before bed, and he said that would be fine. O'Brien then tried to convince the children to have the pixie sticks. However, neither child wanted them. Timothy relented as his dad told him he didn't have time for a lollipop. This is of course the moment that he takes the tainted treat, while Elizabeth outright refused and chose something else. Timothy tried the pixie sticks, but said that it was bitter and horrible. O'Brien then gave him a glass of Kool-Aid to wash it down. Unfortunately, within minutes, Timothy was violently sick. Between a mixture of convulsions, vomiting, and foaming at the mouth, Timothy's body succumbed to the poison in less than 60 minutes. Timothy O'Brien was dead. Former Harris County prosecutor Mike Hinton got a call from the Pasadena Police Department. During this phone call, he was informed that an 8-year-old boy had been rushed to hospital, however died before arrival. Under sheer desperation to get his investigation started, Hinton made contact with Harris County Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Joseph A. Jakimczyk. A quote from Hinton on this is as follows, quote, "I told him the situation, and he asked what the young man's breath smelled like," end quote. He then called the morgue, where he found out that the boy's breath had a lingering resonance of almonds. This led Dr. Jakimczyk to the conclusion that the young boy had been poisoned by cyanide. The autopsy confirmed the cyanide theory, stating that the young boy had consumed enough of the poison to kill 2 fully grown men. Further forensic analysis showed that the end 2 inches on the pixie sticks were filled with poison. The remaining 4 pixie sticks were recovered by the police, thankfully, before anyone else consumed them. Following this, the police took Ronald back to the place where he had said he got the candy from. However, upon arrival, Ronald could not remember which house it was. After a few days had passed and the police had no new leads, they took O'Brien back out and pushed him on his memory. They found the house, although the man who lived there wasn't home. Officers then arrived at Houston's William Hobby P. Airport, where the current suspect worked. They arrested him in front of his colleagues. Looking a little deeper into this, the police found that the man had a solid alibi, demonstrated with timesheets and colleagues' witness statements, of which there were over 200. This, of course, in turn, cast the suspicion onto O'Brien himself. O'Brien was struggling financially, with an estimated over $100,000 worth of debt. Adjusting for inflation, That is around $606,022.31 in 2023. In January 1974, just 9 months before the tragic death of his son, Timothy O'Brien took out life insurance policies on both of his children, worth at the time $10,000, equivalent to roughly $60,622.31 in 2023. 1 month before Timothy's death, O'Brien took out a further policy with the additional value of $20,000, or around $118,700 today. This brings us on to the life of O'Brien. Born on the 19th of October, 1944 in Pasadena, Ronald Clark O'Brien lived in Deer Park, Texas, with his wife, Daneen. Together they had 2 children, Timothy O'Brien and Elizabeth O'Brien. Ronald seemed to live a happy, busy life. He worked as an optician at Texas State Optical in Sharpstown, Houston. As a deacon at the Second Baptist Church, O'Brien used his spare time to run a local bus program and sing in the choir. Not much is known about O'Brien's childhood, which made researching this section relatively hard. What we do know is on October 31st, 1974, Ronald Clark O'Brien committed the crime of murder by way of poisoned candy, giving him the not-so-sweet name, the Candyman. Remember the 5th of November. Ronald Clark O'Brien, holding such monikers as the Man Who Killed Halloween and the Candyman, arrested November 5th, 1974. Indicted on 1 count of capital murder and 4 counts of attempted murder. As previously mentioned, O'Brien passed out pixie sticks to his children, the neighbor's children, and a child he recognized from church, which he had added about 2 inches of potassium cyanide to the end of, killing his child. The speculation on this suggests that his intention was to murder his children for the life insurance money. He thought that he would be more likely to get away with it if he could show that it was not just his child or children that died, but also that the sweets he was given from a rich neighbor were the problem. How could he have known that? This is clearly the work of a man who was happy to lie, but was he happy to kill? The officers investigating the case found that O'Brien had called the life insurance company regarding the policy on his son's life at 9 a.m. the day after Timothy had died. This, linked with a song they had discovered O'Brien had written about his son joining Jesus in heaven, was enough to grant a warrant. The warrant uncovered some physical evidence tying him to the murders. This included scissors that had remains of the plastic from the pixie sticks on the blades. I think at this point it's worth mentioning that the last pixie sticks handed out was recovered by the police, along with all the others. Fortunately, they were unopened, but only due to the fact that the small child lacked the strength and dexterity to remove the staple applied to the end of the plastic after they had been opened and filled with the poison. This allowed them to remain sealed before being handed out. And so, on June 3rd, 1975, the jury reached a fast guilty verdict, taking just 46 minutes. An hour later, it was decided that justice would be served by way of electrical chair. The evidence was damning, and despite his not guilty plea, O'Brien was sentenced to death. Due to a series of attempts for a stay of execution, the date of his execution was bounced from the 8th of August 1980 to the 25th of May 1982. A third date was set for the 31st of October 1982, a fitting date marking the 8-year anniversary of his crime. The Supreme Court gave O'Brien one further chance to seek a retrial before the final date being set for the 31st of March 1984. Just 3 days prior to this, a federal judge rejected the request. As a side note, I thought I would include his last meal. This is as follows: T-bone steak, medium to well done, French fries and ketchup, whole kernel corn, sweet peas, lettuce and tomato salad with egg and French dressing, iced tea, sweetener, saltines, Boston cream pie, and rolls. At this point, I think I should mention that the last words of a man who seemingly had no remorse for his actions can be found below, also within the description of this episode. However, let's read the last words. What is about to transpire in a few moments is wrong. However, we, as human beings, do make mistakes and errors. This execution is one of those wrongs, yet doesn't mean our whole system of justice is wrong. Therefore, I would forgive all who have taken part in any way in my death. Chilling last words indeed. At 12:48 a.m., March 31st, Ronald Clark O'Brien took his final breath. Due to the changes in dates and locations, it was decided that instead of electric chair, O'Brien's death sentence would be carried out with a lethal injection. A rough and estimated amount of around 300 people gathered outside of the prison on the eve of his execution. Many of these were in favour of his punishment, and were even chanting "trick or treat" while throwing candy at the prison. In a complete juxtaposition stood a group of around 30 or so members of Amnesty International. They of course showed contempt for the punishment, and believed that no man should be killed for his crimes. A quote found in an article of the New York Times dated April 1st, 1984, from Daneen, O'Brien's ex-wife, reads, quote, "He made his bed, and now he is having to lie in it. I have no pity for him." End quote. She states in further interviews that she does not hate her ex-husband, but that she feels nothing. She goes on to say that she has a big, empty void following her son's death. Daneen has since remarried and moved away, claiming she has now started a new life and wants to leave this behind her and start a new chapter. I can't say that I think she's wrong. Well then, dear listener, if you have made it this far, thank you for listening. Although this is the end of the story, so to speak, we now have a chat session where we will be going through some talking points within the script and anything else we found interesting or strange about this case. This was recorded as a separate session over a Zoom call. I apologize for any quality issues or lag. We will be working to make this a higher quality as the weeks go on, so stick around, get comfortable, and enjoy the rest of the episode. There we go. We're recording. We are live. Okay. So
fantastic.
Start with the talking points. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think the thing that sort of like most sort of sticks with me about this case is the fact that it's probably like the only case that I know of. I mean, you'll see like copycat murders and so on and so forth, but it seems to be like Ronald O'Brien has literally taken an urban legend and sort of used it as a template to sort of commit murder, which I find sort of quite a fascinating thing. And as like we were saying before, I wonder at what point did he decide, yeah, that's it, sort of Halloween, that's going to be sort of my cover for this.
It does,
and obviously thought, people will find that very believable.
Yeah.
I mean, was he like a religious man? Was he quite religious? I can't remember from the...
So we know that he was a deacon at the local pastor.
I thought he was a
local pastor. That made sense. He was a deacon at the local church.
So I don't really know about the differences between pastors and deacons and stuff. So a deacon, like in sort of Church of England terms, because that's all I know, is that like a priest or a reverend or vicar?
So
would he have like held sort of church meetings and stuff?
I believe so. So they're an ordained minister of an order ranking below that of the priest. So it's not like the same as a priest.
Yeah,
that makes sense. They're like, it's like the police. What is wrong with me today? It's like the priest's understudy.
A priest's understudy. None of that has anything to do with the fact that he's picked like Halloween, sort of the Halloween sort of urban legend as a blueprint for murder. I was just curious, but yeah, obviously, like
I thought he'd get away with it. Like it's something that you can blame on literally anybody.
Yeah, and sort of, I suppose, like in terms of like forensics and stuff back then, I mean, didn't exist in the way it did now, obviously, but you'd think they would have been able to find that. But then I suppose there's an excuse, isn't there? There's an excuse to have your fingerprints on the sweets that sort of your kids have got, or that other kids have got, if he's been the one that's allegedly gone and got them from this mysterious house where no one was. And it's obviously not the wisest plan that he did this, because it didn't work out very well from it. Now, I think a lot of it is just the sheer brass neck of it as well. The fact that he's gone and done this, and like you say, like just the next morning, taking out life insurance policies on children as well, which I think I read somewhere is sort of like quite unusual. People generally don't like to take sort of life insurance policies out on their kids, because nobody wants to sit and contemplate the fact that their child's going to die, let alone, if they do die, I'm going to get some money from it.
Yeah, no, as much as that is true, I did find 2 interesting facts on this, actually. There are certain life insurance policies that you can get for children that pay a certain amount each week or each month in like increments to cover medical bills and stuff for that child. Now that goes goes straight from the insurance company to the hospital, but obviously, whichever place it is. But just as an interesting thing that I saw last night, I was just casually scrolling on the social medias, and I found this ad for a company that I don't really want to name right now. Not because I think they're shady, but I just don't really want to be naming companies. But the ad is literally for life insurance for children. And the reason I thought this was the most amusing for me is because the ad line on it literally says, "Protect your little monsters." And it's 3 children dressed in Halloween attire. And I thought out of all
that is close to the bone, isn't it?
Yeah,
that is,
it really is.
I mean, it's
I thought that was definitely worth a mention here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like you say, isn't it? Like, I kind of understand it more if it's because things are obviously very different in the US. We're in the UK here, so we've got sort of our healthcare is not, we don't have to get insurance for things like that. So I guess it kind of looks a little bit less suspect if the life insurance is sort of like built into medical insurance, of like, in the event of, just sort of like as an add-on rather than like an actual pure life insurance just in case you die. Does that make sense? It kind of makes sense to me. But
there should definitely be cooling off periods as well. Like, you should not be able to get life insurance on a child and then be able to claim that money within like a year.
Yeah.
It should be a minimum of 10 years, unless, of course, there's like an actual, like if they had a life-threatening illness or disease or whatever, like unless there's a legitimate reason that you think that child is going to die, like a legal reason, you shouldn't be able to claim on it. And
I mean, presumably, if you had a child who was ill and might not make it, you wouldn't be able to insure that anyway. But it's all very, very strange. But I think a lot of it speaks to the sheer brass neck of what he's done. And how could he ever sort of hope to get away with that sort of thing? I really, really don't know.
It's ridiculous, and I hate to have to say this because, again, it's one of those points that wasn't entirely verifiable. But as far as I can tell, that money was never claimed either, which means Timothy O'Brien died for literally nothing.
Yeah. I suppose you can't. I'm not an insurance actuary. I don't know what I'm talking about. But I guess, like with things like murder, I don't know about suicide as well. I think suicide, you can't claim life insurance. I don't know. If you're in the US and you know about these things, do let us know, because we are quite ignorant too.
Please do.
Yeah.
But I know that everything I found suggests that even Daneen just didn't want the money by this point.
Yeah. Nothing is gonna compensate for the loss of your child. Obviously, it's just
No.
It's just a peculiar case, and to think of it, his motive for doing it presumably is the debt, but to think that he was that desperate that just the next day he was ringing them up. That's
Like literally
yeah, that's quite something. It's a real piece of work, isn't he? A real piece of work. And I thought that as well, like from his closing speech. What do I mean? From his last words that he read out. I was like,
does not mention
the hubris of it. The pure sort of hubris, the pure arrogance of it. It's like, oh, well, I forgive you. It's like, mate, you've literally committed murder. You've murdered your own son and attempted to murder other children in the process.
Yeah.
But you forgive everyone else. I just,
Forget
what a character.
Murder is still murder, whether it's a child or a grown-up. Like he seems to like fundamentally forget that, and he's just like, yeah, I forgive you, mate. Yeah, off.
Yeah, and like just the way that it read, I was just, it's like I'd said to you before. I would love to have heard what his defense came up with. I mean, did he plead not guilty? Do we know if he pled not guilty? I think he did, didn't he?
He pled not guilty, and
I can't remember.
For like acquittal and all kinds of different things. And if we get to a point where we go further into this at some point, I'll try my best to do further research, but everything was kind of difficult to find, and he definitely did plead not guilty. It was a minefield of research.
I mean, there's a lot of evidence against him, and it seems so sort of open and shut that I would be sort of really curious to see sort of what sort of narrative the defense could possibly come up with that would get you sort of like looking at it differently, because I can't conceive of one. It seems to be so clear cut, this case, that this man's definitely done this. I mean, maybe early doors when they don't know that it was him, they didn't know about the life insurance yet, and they suspected the other guy, who's the poor guy whose house that he used sort of in the course of the crime. But what a thing to sort of try and get away with.
On that,
not done a very good job. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry, I did actually decide that I would omit that guy's name, the suspect.
Yeah.
Purely because it seems like at the very beginning, when he became a suspect, his family became a target for like so much abuse, and I just, without being able to vindicate him, I just wanted to maybe not really bring as much of a spotlight to him, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I suppose as well, because the nature of the case, I think is, I mean, the internet wasn't as the internet is now back then, obviously, but just in terms of the story, and because it is this urban legend, like this fear that sort of if you take your kids out trick-or-treating, or if you go out trick-or-treating, you're going to find like razor blades in your sweets and things like that sort of, I can imagine that sort of being quite widespread. To think that it had actually happened, I think back to sort of like my childhood and the sorts of things you'd hear in the playground that you could, because back then, because I'm very elderly and very ancient, back then you couldn't actually verify these things or not verify them or disprove them. So I can imagine sort of that urban legend already being out there, and then sort of it catches on that, okay, this has actually happened now, someone's actually done this. And I wonder sort of how many people actually sort of knew about this case. Everyone's heard sort of like the urban legend, everyone knows about sort of like the films. The films incidentally are nothing to do with actually Roland. I keep calling him Roland, he's called Ronald, isn't he? Ronald O'Brien.
Yeah.
Completely different, but I did see and I mentioned it to you, and I've not heard it, so it might be an interesting one to go and play, but apparently Susie and the Banshees have done a song called Candyman that is based on Ronald O'Brien, but to my knowledge the film Candyman has nothing to do with Ronald O'Brien at all.
Yeah, no, I've found the same. There's no real link to O'Brien in anything that I've really found when it comes to like pop culture references.
Which is surprising, isn't it?
Yeah, you'd expect. I mean, specifically somebody who has the name, given to him by prison inmates, the Candyman. You would expect at some point some kind of reference to the Candyman being Ronald O'Brien. Like, it's
Yeah.
that nobody ever. I mean, I get it; it's a very sensitive case, and I guess people probably didn't really want to cover that. But yeah, it's bizarre that they never did.
Yeah, very strange indeed. What else did I want to talk about? I wanted to ask about the cyanide, and it was never discovered where he got it from. Is that right?
In all the reports I found, yeah, even in like the actual closing statement from the police when it went to court, they were never able to actually ascertain where he had got this from. And that's
Yeah.
why at one point there was a theory that he'd made it himself. But again, there was no evidence to support that. That's what's made this case very hard to research. There's no evidence to support a lot of the claims that are sort of surrounding it.
Yeah, and I had a little look because I don't know. I mean, aside from sort of the true crime thing, I don't know much about cyanide apart from it sort of tends to be sort of like a poisonous drug of choice, or weapon of choice, whatever you might call it. So I had a little Google of cyanide and what it does, because I was like thinking, well, what is cyanide actually legitimately used for? And I didn't really know, but I found out it was first used in sort of World War One as like a chemical agent, and what did you say? Pesticides as well. There's not an awful lot of sort of common or garden uses for cyanide outside sort of pesticides, from what I can see.
Yeah, and sadly, when I actually pitched this case to a friend of mine, he talked about the irony of if lethal injection was done with cyanide, how it would be for Ronald to actually have died with the thing that was essentially his weapon of choice. But unfortunately, there's nothing to suggest that cyanide has ever been used in lethal injection. So I think we missed it.
Oh, here we are. I am on the, this is the New York State Department of Health have put out a useful fact sheet, the facts about cyanides, and it says here, can't find it now. Historically, been used as a chemical weapon. Cyanide and cyanide-containing compounds are used in pesticides and fumigants, plastics, electroplating. What's electroplating? Can't remember. Photo developing and mining. Dye and drug companies also use cyanides. Some industrial processes such as iron and steel production, chemical industries and wastewater treatment. Now, what did he do as a job? Do we know?
He was an optician.
He was an optician. I mean, I'm trying to look at sort of that list of things to see.
He got fired from a long list of jobs, but again, none of them were easy to verify. It was like fraud and just dodgy behavior, essentially.
Yeah. So there's sort of no way of sort of verifying or even sort of making a more educated guess as to whether or not he'd had sort of contact with sort of those sorts of chemicals within his employment.
The only thing I can think of is electroplating is essentially, I know you mentioned electroplating, but it's essentially where they use electric currents within water to make things like certain metals stick to other metals. So if something's like silver coated, the method by way that's done is electroplating.
And they use cyanide for that. Do we have any opticians listening that might know? Do opticians have access to cyanide?
Well, the only thing I can think of is I don't know what kind of chemicals they would have used back then, but obviously electroplating glasses, if you're using like a steel frame and somebody wants it, I don't know, just for example, they wanted it to have that silver sheen, would they actually use this method to adhere the silver to the steel? I don't know. That is pure speculation.
Yeah, I kind of think now the frames would probably come from elsewhere. They'd like order the frames in, but I don't know what about like the coating, like the what's the coating that goes on glasses, like the anti-glare stuff. I wonder if that. But again, we're clutching at absolute straws because at the end of the day, we just don't know. We just don't know how he's done this, which is, and he's never. Did he ever never at any point sort of had any sort of remorse or conceded that actually, yeah, I have done this? No sort of like admission at any point at all. Just maintained until the end. He was.
Yeah, as far as I found, right up until the day he died, he claimed he was innocent.
Yeah, yeah.
He
It's
never talked
astonishing,
about the
really.
crime. He never, well, I say never talked about the crime. He always talked about his innocence. He always professed his innocence. He never once even hinted to anybody. Within what I found, I could be wrong, but he never once hinted to anybody anything about it, other than the one guy that again was almost unverifiable that he tried to buy the cyanide from. But I didn't
Yeah,
know a name. There was no real story, and all we really know is, even to this day, the police records still state that they don't know how he got the cyanide.
yeah, yeah. It's strange, isn't it? And it's like you say, if he's not made it at home, and I don't want to take my Google searches by googling how to
Yeah.
make cider.
Well,
there's already enough
she said,
in there. There's already enough in there to mark me as highly dodgy. Probably on a list somewhere. Bit worrying. What else do we have to talk about? What else do we have to say about this?
I
You
mean,
said
one
about
thing,
his last meal.
yeah, one thing I wanted to mention with like specifically that section as well, with his last meal, like we talked about this before, and I've spoken to other people about this, which is really bizarre, I know, but would you, in that situation, actually be able to have a last meal? And if so, what would you choose and why? Like, what is the fundamental basis that your brain is telling you is your last meal?
Yeah, I mean, part of me said, I don't know. I mean, you could go either way, I suppose. You'd be like, oh, sod it. I'm just gonna go hell for leather. I'm just gonna eat absolutely everything that comes into my path. Or are you allowed booze? I mean, I suppose it's cheating a bit if you say, oh, I'll just have a bottle of whiskey, thank you. I'll just knock myself out. But I'm sure like they have like beers and stuff. I'm sure, isn't there like I think there's like a Twitter account or I've seen somebody somewhere that does like a Twitter account or a social media account where they post like the last meals of people on death row, and they update it sort of every so often. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'd be hungry, or maybe I would. Maybe I suppose it depends if you've accepted what's going to happen to you. If you've just sort of like, okay, I'm at peace with this, might as well have some cakes.
I mean, that's the other side of it. That we are having this conversation as somebody that has not committed that crime.
Yeah, this is the thing.
Ourselves in the mindset of somebody who killed their child for, $100,000 or whatever. Like, we're not in.
Yeah.
Interestingly, while you were talking, I did do a quick Google, and alcohol and tobacco are usually, but not always, denied for a last meal. Exceptional circumstance, and particularly when it comes to religion, they will allow it, but it's most of the time denied.
What really? I suppose communion wine, but
I was going to say, I think is probably more talking about the alcohol than anything else. I didn't, I just quick cursory glance.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now. Sort of what religion like lets you drink alcohol or encourages, apart from communion wine. I can't think of an example, but there probably is one. There's lots of religions out there.
Yeah, too many for me to try and list.
What else were we going to say? We were saying about pixie sticks. I know you don't like the X on the end of pixie sticks.
Yeah, so I have a bit issue with the grammar in this, because pixie sticks is actually spelt, pixie is spelt completely fine, but then sticks is spelled S-T-I-X, and there are sections within the script that I've written that I almost had to rewrite because I didn't like the sticks, the S or the X being an S sound at the end.
The singular also being the plural.
Yeah, because it's like, you're kind of reading it, and you're reading it like, oh, he had the pixie sticks, but he didn't like it, and that it really rattled my brain the first few times I read this. It was a nightmare. I just think
I had to look up what.
It's better written.
Sorry, I had to look up what pixie sticks were. I was trying to, because obviously we're in the UK, and I was trying to think to myself, okay, what is a pixie stick? And I thought back to my childhood. Obviously, I'm a bit older than you, and I was like, okay, it's some sort of sherbety thing. And I was like, oh, is it like a sherbet fountain or a sherbet dib-dab type thing? And it's not that, is it? And I think we do have them over here, and we have Googled it. We have something called rainbow dust, weren't they? Not angel dust, as I thought. That's something else completely different. Not angel dust, rainbow dust. But like long sort of plastic straws that are sort of filled with. It's kind of like sherbet, but it's more like a powder. And if you look at it, if you Google it, you see the powder's sort of like different colour, sort of depending on the different flavours of pixie stick. And that reminded me of. Did you ever have one like when you were young, like the Swizzle double dip thing, and it had like a cherry flavour on one side and an orange flavour on the other side, and it came with like a yellow sort of candied stick thing.
It was chalk.
Yeah. Was it chalk? I don't know. I don't know. It was simpler times. We made do back then.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah. So the powder in those ones, like the pink and the orange, it's that kind of powder rather than just like straight up sort of sherbet that you'd get in like a sherbet fountain. I never knew how to eat a sherbet fountain. I always thought you're supposed to try, and licorice is horrible. Anyway, don't like licorice. Don't email me about that. Don't like licorice. But yeah, pixie sticks. I don't really remember having them that much, but then that might just be because I'm old. But they're not like a funda or rainbow dust, as it's called over here. I don't know sort of what equivalents of that other people have sort of elsewhere. Sort of, yeah. Email us. Let us know. Let us know what pixie sticks are in your country if you have them.
Adding to that, though, if you can email us, but also just to let you know, the email will be in the description within this episode. But if you can email us not only what they were called, but also if you can find one, send us a picture. And I promise you, we will respond to every picture that we get with a picture of what we found them to be in the UK.
Yeah. Because it's, looking at the American version, they do look sort of like packaged slightly differently. I've got like a vague recollection of. Yeah. I've got like a vague recollection of being in Woolworths, I think, and being like, oh yeah, I'm going to have that because it's like the biggest possible thing I can afford to buy with my pocket money that has sugar in it. So when I was must have been about sort of 10 or 11 or something like that. But yeah, I don't remember them from sort of like early childhood. I don't remember them being the sort of thing that would be given out on Halloween. But then I think over here, sort of Halloween's a bit different, isn't it? It has become more sort of Americanized, but this culture of going out and trick-or-treating, we might do it sort of once or twice, but it's definitely become more of a celebration in the UK sort of the past sort of 10, 15 years, I'd say.
And on that, do you know the old sort of paganist idea behind Halloween?
Yeah.
With like the masks and what that was actually for and everything like that, you know, Samhain, like the original Halloween.
Yeah.
I always find it really bizarre that we've gone from, oh my God, let's make sure that our children have masks to mask their face from these demons to, oh look, there's a Snickers bar. Like, where did we draw the conclusion where at one point we're hiding from demons and now all of a sudden we're just eating junk?
we're getting things. Whose idea was that? But a good one. Everyone likes.
I was going to say, I'm not complaining, not even a little bit. I mean, I guess I'm complaining slightly that now I'm in my 30s. It's unacceptable for me to be banging on people's doors asking for sweets, but never mind.
Yeah, this is the thing. I think there is some sort of like vague bitterness there, because in my day, like you might go sort of over the road to like your immediate neighbours, or you might go to sort of like family members, but there wasn't sort of the same culture of trick-or-treating that there seems to be in America anyway. And there wasn't the same sort of culture of, I remember sort of being a witch, you had like a black bin liner and some tinfoil stars that were sort of put, and your mum was like, right, you're a witch. Had to do a lot of the work in your imagination back in those days. Yeah, we didn't have sort of like the same levels of sort of costume, and it's become a real holiday now. Like you get people that decorate their houses and everything. We didn't have pumpkins either.
What?
This has become like woe is me and my very, very simple childhood.
Oh,
we didn't have pumpkins as such to carve. We used to do turnips, and surely if you've ever tried to carve a turnip, absolutely lethal.
Yeah,
like your mum would be fed up with you. She'd just start, off you go, try and carve that.
Oh God.
You'd lose a limb in the process.
So bad, but so funny. Oh my god. So yeah, now that we've exhausted the things I wanted to cover, is there anything else, or what are you thinking?
I can't think so off the top of my head. It's yeah. The main thing was just the sheer brass neck of it. The fact that he's like, okay, this urban legend is sort of like that's going to be my cover. That's going to be my cover for. I'm trying to think of any other sort of like cases where like a folk legend or an urban legend has been sort of used or as a template or in the course of a murder somehow. Like what other murders have occurred on Halloween?
So
I
again,
don't know. There must
I
be
did
more.
look into that, and as far as I can tell, there has been nothing that has actually been noteworthy when it comes to somebody using candy for murder around Halloween.
Yeah.
However, there have been some weird situations. One of which was, I believe it was in like the late 70s. But there was a dentist who was giving out laxatives that were coated in like sugar. He was giving those out at Halloween. No idea why, just some weird thing that he was doing.
Okay.
And there was she was described as a crazy old lady who was just giving children inedible objects wrapped in like sweet wrappers.
I guess that kind of goes with the trick or treat, but I mean, laxative dentist has taken it a bit far, bless him. But maybe he's just absolutely had it with kids or kids parents, just like right, right, you're gonna knock on my door, have some of this. That's mean. That's mean. Carry on. People with laxatives, if not fatal, if not as bad as Ronald O'Brien.
Well, no, exactly.
Laxative dentist. That's like a band name.
It sounds like a weird band name. Oh my god.
A weird band, granted.
Yeah. So I guess hey, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if there's anything else you want to cover, but for me, it's just my final point really that unfortunately the lack of researchable topics and difficulty verifying sources has made it quite difficult to do this episode. So I kind of want to know, audience participation and all of that. I kind of want to know how you guys felt about this episode, and I want to know whether you think we should do another full in-depth version of this in the future, and just let us know how you feel about it. Let us know whether you enjoyed it, the things that you didn't like. Don't just come in and start throwing hate into our mailbox, but if you've got reasonable criticism, just let us know. And
yeah, we are open to feedback, obviously.
Please remember that for both of us, this is a relatively new endeavor, and we do write these scripts ourselves. So, if you have any criticisms that are constructive, please feel free to bring them. But as I said, the email address will be in the description, and as will our links to all of our socials. Obviously, we would massively appreciate if you could like and subscribe, maybe follow. And if you want to support us, our Patreon is going live pretty soon. My co-host here shall be doing some other things over on Patreon, so I'm looking forward to that. And maybe if she wants to, she can have a brief talk about that now, what she's going to be doing.
Well, I am looking to do some art prints for our top tier Patreons. I'm a printmaker and illustrator, and some of the locations that we're talking about, my case next week that we've got planned for next week, I'll just do like a little intro to that. I am doing a case that's from my hometown of St Austell, and it wouldn't surprise me, quite a few people in St Austell have absolutely no idea about it. And it is the case of Caracal House and Miles Gifford, the Gifford family murders. So that's what I'm going to be covering. And I have got some art prints that I have made of the area that I might put up on our top tier Patreon. But it's all going to be sorted out, but that's in the works, as it were. So tune in next week to hear about that.
Well, there you go, guys. As you heard, there is definitely more on the way. I hope everybody enjoyed our spooky little evening's worth of presentation here. cut that out. That was terrible. I really hope you guys enjoyed our episode tonight. And as I said previously, just please like and subscribe, and don't be afraid to give feedback. Just know, hey, we don't need that. We're not here for that. Thank you for joining, guys.
Okay, thank you for listening to us. We've been Panopticon, and we will see you again soon. Bye bye.
I totally forgot to drop our name. Agreed. We are Panopticon.
It'd be good. It would be good.
Take care. Hello all. This is a post-edit edition, just to say thank you. We are Panopticon. You can find us on all of the socials found in the episode description on our Linktree. If you like this and want to support us, we have a Patreon account, a Ko-fi account, and also we will be doing bonus content for any paid subscribers on Spotify. Please check out all of these and feel free to add any feedback or email us your comments and suggestions. But for now, happy Halloween, and I hope you have enjoyed our spooky season special podcast episode.